Ladies and gentlemen, young explorers and curious minds, have you ever felt the ground beneath your feet and wondered what lies below? Not just a few meters of soil, but the entire archive of Earth's memory waiting to be read. That is what geology books offer us. Not just information, but a connection, a portal, a way of seeing the world not just as it is, but as it has always been. In a hurried rhythm of modern life, we often forget to listen to the whispers of the earth. But within the pages of geology books, the whispers grow louder. Each chapter is a voice, sometimes calm, sometimes thunderous, telling us of times long past and yet still present beneath us. These books are more than academic texts. They are testimonies. They carry within them the secrets of continents that once danced together and of oceans that silently swallowed empires. Think for a moment. The sand on a beach could be the powdered remnants of ancient mountains. A pebble in your hand might have once been part of a vast tectonic plate drifting through Earth's fiery mantle. When you open a geology book, you're not just studying, you're listening. You're stepping into a realm where stones speak and landscapes evolve like breathing beings. Geology books do not shout, they don't demand. Instead, they invite. With care and clarity, they guide us through layers of history written in basalt, limestone, and shale. They introduce us to minerals that gleam with the secrets of pressure and time, and to fossils, tiny echoes of life that dared to exist millions of years ago. But the power of these books lies not just in what they teach, but in how they awaken a sense of belonging. You see, to study geology is to accept that you are a small part of a magnificent, complex, and ever-changing planet. It is humbling and empowering at once. It makes you realize that the earth has endured far more than we can imagine, and still it holds us, feeds us, supports us. And as you read, a transformation occurs. Mountains are no longer just backgrounds for photos. They become ancient sculptures shaped by unimaginable forces. Valleys become scars from glaciers that once roared across continents. Deserts become reminders of seas that vanished under the heat of changing climates. The world stops being static. It becomes alive. I remember the first time I truly read a geology book, not for school, but for the sake of wonder. The diagrams of Earth's inner layers became more than drawings. They were windows into a molten world beneath my own. The timeline stretching back billions of years no longer seemed abstract. They became the story of my home. I felt awe, not the fleeting kind, but the deep, resonant awe that changes the way you see everything. That is what geology books can do. They inspire awe, not with fantasy, but with truth, not with imagination, but with evidence. And in doing so, they give us something precious, perspective, a sense of time so vast that it humbles our problems, and a sense of beauty so intricate that it awakens gratitude. So I say this to you, dear listener, dear reader, do not underestimate the power of those heavy, dusty geology books. Open them, read them slowly. Let the words sink into you like water into ancient stone. Let them teach you to see not just with your eyes, but with your mind and your heart. Because once you begin to understand the earth, you begin to understand life itself, its fragility, its strength, and its astonishing story written beneath your very feet. To those who wander through the world in search of meaning, who ask the big questions, where did we come from? What forces shape us? Geology offers not only answers, but a profound philosophy of patience, change, and resilience. And the books that capture this science are far more than collections of data. They are compasses for the soul. Open a geology book, and you don't just enter a subject. You begin a dialogue with the earth itself. You discover that rocks, seemingly still and silent, are in fact monuments of transformation. Within them are tales of fire and water, pressure and erosion, collapse and rebirth. Each layer, each fault, each fossilized shell is a sentence in the Earth's great autobiography. And geology books help us read that story with reverence. Let us reflect for a moment. We live our lives measuring time in minutes, days, and years. But geology teaches us to think in eons. It asks us to stretch our imagination across billions of years, to imagine a single continent tearing apart, drifting and colliding to form mountains so high they pierce the sky. It asks us to feel the slow grinding of glaciers that sculpted entire valleys, or the rising of land once submerged beneath ancient seas. This is not merely science, it is meditation. And what better teacher of this perspective than a geology book? Within its pages, we find not only theories and charts, but an invitation to change the way we view time, space, and even ourselves. Suddenly, we are not just individuals. We are inheritors of a legacy written in stone. You begin to see the world differently. That red cliff, 1,000,000 years of sediment deposited grain by grain. That cave, a cathedral of crystal built drop by drop over centuries. The granite under your feet, a remnant of Earth's first crust, a survivor of a time when no human had even imagined fire. As you read, you start noticing the metaphors. The earth cracks, and still it holds. It erodes, and still it endures. Layers bury the past, and yet, somehow, the record remains. You realize that geology books are not just about the planet. They mirror the human spirit. In every folded mountain and weathered stone lies a truth we can carry into our lives. That change is constant, that time heals, and that even pressure can produce beauty. The geologist reading their book is like a detective with ancient clues, reconstructing vanished worlds with fragments and patterns. They don't merely memorize, they imagine, they feel, they sense. They learn to hear the thunder of ancient eruptions in a layer of ash. They learn to picture vast forests from a fossilized leaf. And what a privilege it is to join that journey, to turn the pages and feel a heartbeat of the earth, one revelation at a time. Geology books also teach humility. They remind us that humans have been here for the briefest of moments. The planet has spun, oceans have risen and fallen, continents have merged and split long before we arrived. And yet, here we are, lucky enough to witness it, to study it, to protect it. When you read geology books, you're not just learning, you're becoming a steward of wisdom. You carry forward the knowledge of those who mapped fault lines by hand, who hiked across deserts to find one stone out of place, who drilled into the crust to reach secrets hidden miles below. These books, with their maps, cross-sections, and diagrams, might seem cold at first glance, but they burn with purpose. They carry the hopes of generations who wanted to understand where we stand and why it matters. They are love letters to the earth, written in the language of science. So take the time. Pick up a geology book, not because you must, but because you can. Feel the weight of it, smell the paper, trace your finger along the folds of a map. Read the stories of volcanoes, earthquakes, oceans, and ice. Let it change you. Let it remind you that you too are part of something ancient. That your own struggles are not unlike those of the earth, built under pressure, shaped by storms, beautiful because of the forces that tried to break you. Geology books are not just about rocks. They are about resilience, about remembering, about reconnecting. They're about looking at the ordinary and seeing the extraordinary. And once you see the world through those eyes, you can never go back. There is something quietly sacred about a geology book, not in the way we think of temples or rituals, but in the still, profound reverence it cultivates within us for the very planet we call home. To read one is to kneel beside an ancient storyteller, to hear not with ears, but with awe. The heart of the earth beats in its pages, slow and deep, and if we are willing, we can align our rhythm to its eternal pulse. Geology is not a subject that screams for attention. It is not loud or boastful, but its power lies in its steadiness, in its certainty. And geology books, by their very nature, echo that rhythm. They do not rush. They unfold layer by layer like the strata they describe. They ask of us patience, the same patience required by a river that takes 10,000 years to carve a canyon. Why should we care? Because these books teach us the greatest lesson of all, that everything changes, and yet everything remains connected. The hills you see may have once been seabeds. The dry desert may carry fossils of marine life. And the marble that gleams on a palace wall was once humble limestone, pressed and metamorphosed by time and pressure. In these transformations lies a metaphor for life. We too are shaped by unseen forces. We are weathered by time. We are forged by pressure. We carry layers of memory, of loss, of growth, just like the earth. The language of geology books may at first seem distant with its technical terms and scientific diagrams. But as you continue reading, something happens. The language starts to feel like poetry, not in rhyme, but in revelation. You begin to realize that stratigraphy is just a way of telling a story, that igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic are not just rock types. They are chapters in the novel of Earth. Every book holds something different. One may take you into the fury of a volcanic eruption, describing the magma's ascent like a pulse of rage from the planet's molten heart. Another might guide you gently through a glacial landscape, painting images of a world softened by ice. Still another may lead you underground, into the realm of faults and folds, where tectonic forces build mountains from invisibility. And as you turn each page, you're no longer just a reader. You are a witness. You witness extinction and renewal. You stand alongside the geologists who, with nothing but pickaxes and notebooks, ventured into the wild to decode the past. You walk the rim of ancient calderas. You climb imaginary mountains. You dive into prehistoric seas. You begin to see the Earth's face in everything. The tilt of a cliff, the shape of a valley, the color of the soil. Your senses sharpen. You no longer see just rocks. You see time, motion, life. You see the miracle of a planet that has never stopped changing and yet has always remained Earth. This is the gift of geology books. They do not merely educate, they awaken. They call forth a deeper awareness, one that gently asks, what is your place in all of this? You, a being of a few decades, walking upon a surface billions of years old. How will you walk? With indifference or with reverence? These books also serve as warnings. In their quiet way, they show us how fragile the balance is, how shifts in climate, in ocean currents, in tectonic plates can reshape the world. And they remind us that while the earth is powerful, it is not invincible. It responds, it reacts, and it remembers. To read geology books is to make a pact with a responsibility. You begin to care more deeply, not just about landscapes, but about ecosystems, not just about minerals, but about resources. You see how our actions are etched into the Earth's future, just as past eras are etched into its stones. The more you read, the more you fall in love, not with a romanticized idea of nature, but with its true form, raw, beautiful, ancient, unapologetic, alive. And like any love, this one transforms you. It makes you gentler with your steps, more curious with your eyes, more thoughtful in your questions. You begin to ask not just how the earth formed, but why we've been given the chance to understand it at all. That is the spiritual reward of geology books. They return us to humility. They anchor us in truth. And they fill us with gratitude. Not the kind shouted from rooftops, but the kind that settles deep within, as quiet and enduring as the stones themselves. So the next time you hold a geology book, hold it like a relic, like a piece of the earth itself. Let it weigh down your hands and lift up your mind. Let it carry you through the cataclysms and calms of deep time. And when you close it, carry its lessons with you, in the way you see, the way you walk, and the way you live. There's a quiet moment known to every true reader of geology when the words in a book dissolve into imagery, and suddenly you're no longer in your room or your classroom. You are walking across the crust of an ancient supercontinent. You are standing at the edge of a primordial sea. You are watching mountain ranges rise and fall like breath. In that moment, you are not just a learner. You are a witness to history so profound it cannot be measured in years, but in lifetimes of lifetimes. That is the power of geology books. They do not simply inform, they immerse. They do not just open your eyes, they open your soul to a deeper truth, that the earth has been speaking long before we were ever here, and if we listen, truly listen, it will reveal to us everything we need to know about resilience, patience, and interconnectedness. Geology books are filled with diagrams, yes, with words like orogeny, plate boundaries, magma intrusion, isostatic rebound. But beneath the surface of those terms lies something universal, the idea that nothing is ever truly still. The ground beneath us is in constant motion. The planet is forever becoming. And in that realization, we find a mirror of ourselves. We too are in motion. We too are being shaped, not by tectonic forces, but by experiences, by love and loss, by pressure and growth. And just like the rocks, we hold within us the record of all we've been through. We are walking layers, human sediment, living chronicles of time and transformation. In geology books, we meet the great paradox of life, how something so ancient can feel so present. A fossil embedded in shale is a relic of a lost world, and yet there it is, real, tangible, before your very eyes. Isn't that a kind of magic? That something which lived hundreds of millions of years ago still has a voice, still has a form, still exists? Reading about it doesn't just give you knowledge, it gives you reverence. It changes the way you speak about the world. Suddenly, words like stone, river, cave, or crust are no longer common nouns. They are symbols, teachers, anchors. You begin to understand that geology is not about dead things. It's about stories that refuse to die. And those who wrote these books, the geologists, the explorers, the thinkers, they weren't just scientists. They were seekers, visionaries who ventured into deserts and tundras, into the bones of mountains and the mouths of volcanoes, all for the same reason, to read the earth and to write down what it had to say. Their passion lives on in these books. You can feel it in the ink. It hums beneath the text like a quiet drumbeat, a heartbeat even, guiding you deeper and deeper into the world's memory. Their voices become your companions. Their discoveries become your revelations. Their awe becomes your inheritance. And what a gift that is, to inherit all. To be given the opportunity through a simple book to connect with something as vast and mysterious as a planet. Sometimes in our modern age, we forget the value of wonder. We trade it for convenience, for speed, for surface level understanding. But geology books remind us that true understanding takes time, that to know something deeply, you must sit with it, layer by layer, and let it speak to you in its own time. This is why the study of geology is an act of faith, not in the spiritual sense, but in the sense of trust. Trust in the earth's ability to tell its story. Trust in our ability to interpret it with integrity. Trust that even the smallest pebble holds a truth worth discovering. And as you delve deeper into these books, you find yourself changing. Your thinking becomes more patient. Your curiosity deepens. You begin to see lessons everywhere, in a cracked sidewalk, in the color of a canyon wall, in the softness of clay between your fingers. You become attuned. And with that attunement comes gratitude, not the shallow gratitude of saying thank you when things go well, but the deep gratitude of knowing that you are part of something much larger than yourself. That your life, fleeting though it may be, is stitched into the epic of this planet. It's not always easy. The language can be technical, the processes complex. But if you persevere, if you keep turning the pages, you will find gold. Not the kind that glitters, but the kind that glows in the mind. Enlightenment, connection, awe. And that is the gift geology books give us. They bring us into the fold. They make us participants in the greatest story ever told. The story of a planet that formed from dust and fire, that cooled and cracked and flourished, that gave rise to life, to beauty, to consciousness. To read them is to say, I want to know this world. I want to know it truly. I want to honor it by understanding it. And in doing so, we don't just honor the earth. We honor ourselves. There comes a moment, perhaps somewhere in the middle of a long hike through mountains, or in the quiet stillness while reading a geology book late at night, when something deeper begins to stir within you, a realization, a voice, a connection. It's the sense that the story you are reading isn't just about the earth. It's about you, about all of us. Because the journey through geology is ultimately a journey through humanity, one etched not only in rocks, but in resilience, wonder, and purpose. When we look at a rock, we often see only the surface, but to the geologist, that surface is a doorway, a beginning, a signal that there is more beneath, more to uncover, more to understand. And isn't that the same with people, with life? What geology books teach us, perhaps more profoundly than any other science, is that everything, no matter how ordinary it appears, has a story beneath its surface. That pebble you kick aside may have once been part of a mountain range that rivaled the Himalayas. The sand under your feet might be the remnants of a coral reef that flourished before the age of dinosaurs. The dry canyon wall may have once been the bed of a thriving, flowing river. Nothing is random. Everything is part of a chain of cause and effect, of transformation, of time's silent work. And so are we. These books become more than academic tools. They become metaphors, guides, sources of emotional truth. We begin to see the tectonic shifts in our own lives, those moments of deep pressure that fracture our foundations, but also create new landscapes of strength and possibility. We understand the erosion of time in our memories, the way life slowly reshapes our thoughts, our hopes, our identities. We learn through geology how to endure, how to adapt, how to find beauty in the broken layers. There is healing in geology books. Yes, healing. Because in their stories of collapse and rebirth, of sediment buried and brought to light again, they reflect our own capacity to rise after falling. They remind us that change is not to be feared. It is the mechanism through which the earth has survived every trial it's faced. And if the earth can do it, if mountains can crumble and rise again, then so can we. Perhaps you've felt small when reading a geology book. Perhaps you've looked at a timescale chart and seen your entire life reduced to less than the blink of an eye. But that isn't meant to make you feel unimportant. It's meant to show you something even more sacred, that in your brief moment here, you have the gift of awareness, the gift of understanding, the gift of contributing to the long and ongoing story of this planet. You are not insignificant. You are an observer, a witness, and potentially a guardian, a reader of the record, a voice for the voiceless layers beneath your feet. And in a world that often feels disconnected, fractured, and uncertain, geology books offer us a rare kind of clarity. They teach us what it means to belong, not to a country, a group, or even a century, but to Earth itself, to this ancient home that has cradled every creature, every culture, every triumph and tragedy ever known. They show us unity in diversity, in minerals and landscapes, in climates and crusts. They reveal how interconnected everything is, how the shifting of a plate can birth a volcano that feeds a valley, that nourishes a civilization, that writes stories passed down through generations. They show us that we are not alone, that our lives matter because they are part of something infinitely larger and yet intricately delicate. And that realization, it humbles you, it grounds you, it calls you to be more thoughtful, not just about rocks, but about people, about choices, about the future. Because if the Earth has survived asteroid impacts, ice ages, supervolcanoes, and mass extinctions, and still keeps turning, then surely we can find the strength to face our own challenges too. There is a quiet revolution inside every geology book, one that urges us not only to learn, but to feel, not only to memorize facts, but to internalize purpose, to care more deeply for the planet, to walk more gently upon it, to listen, not just with our ears or our intellect, but with the deepest parts of our hearts. When you study geology, you begin to see the sacred in the solid, the divine in the dirt, the eternity in the everyday. And that is a gift far beyond scientific knowledge. That is wisdom. So let us honor these books. Let us share them. Let us read them, not only with our eyes, but with our spirit. Let us recognize that when we pass on the stories within, we are passing on a legacy, not just of rocks and time, but of reverence, curiosity, and responsibility. Because somewhere, right now, there is a young mind picking up a geology book for the first time, and in their hands, held between two covers, is the universe of Earth Plus. And now, we arrive at the summit, not just of this speech, but of the journey that begins with a single book and stretches deep into the soul of the earth. If geology books have taught us anything, it is this. The earth is not only beneath us, it is within us. Its layers are not just layers of rock. They are layers of meaning, memory, and mystery. And when we read, when we truly engage with these books, we are not simply learning facts. We are reclaiming a lost conversation with our ancient home. There is something profoundly eternal about the knowledge in geology books. Unlike fleeting headlines or passing trends, the stories told here are sculpted in permanence. These are stories of continents drifting silently over oceans for millions of years, of mountain ranges forming, eroding, and reforming again, of species rising, flourishing, and vanishing, leaving behind only a trace in stone. And the greatest miracle of all is this: we can read them. We, small and fleeting creatures of flesh and breath, can open a book and peer into the abyss of time itself. We can understand, however imperfectly, the rhythms of a world that has spun for 4.5 billion years. That is not just science. That is poetry. That is devotion. That is love. Geology books do not demand belief. They invite observation. They offer truths that are measurable, repeatable, and yet no less miraculous for their certainty. They do not ask us to imagine the fantastical. They show us the fantastical in what is real. A river that carves a canyon, a volcano that creates an island, a mineral formed from the slow cooling of a lava flow 100 kilometers beneath the crust. And when you read those truths, when you begin to understand them, your view of the world transforms. No longer is the earth just the ground. It is a storyteller, an artist, a survivor, a being of immense power and subtle grace. And you, as its reader, become a keeper of that story. In a world that moves too fast, that seeks the new while ignoring the ancient, geology books are an anchor. They remind us to slow down, to observe, to ask deeper questions. They remind us that the present is just a blink, and that the only way to understand it is to learn from the deep and distant past. And how beautiful is that a book, just paper and ink, can become a key to such profound truth. Imagine a student, young, uncertain, unsure of the future, picking up their first geology book. They expect dry facts. Instead, they find fire. They find ice. They find oceans that once swallowed continents, and wind that sculpted dunes higher than skyscrapers. They find fossils that speak of ancient life, and diagrams that reveal the invisible forces beneath their feet. And in that moment, something clicks. They realize they are not separate from the earth. They are part of its ongoing story. That is the quiet revolution geology books ignite. A shift in how we see ourselves. A move from separation to connection, from ignorance to awareness, from apathy to wonder. These books have the power to shape not only scientists, but stewards, people who will walk the earth with care, knowing that their footprints join a record that stretches back to the dawn of time. People who will look at a cliff and see not just rock, but history. Who will look at a fault line and see not just danger, but dialogue. Who will look at the earth and say, I see you, I honor you, I will learn from you. And that learning never ends. Each new edition brings new insights. Each new discovery adds another page to the Earth's biography. And each reader, each one of us, becomes a link in the chain of understanding, preserving, and protecting what we have learned. So, as we close this final chapter, let us remember, geology books are not merely for the geologists. They are for the dreamers, for the wanderers, for anyone who has ever looked at the horizon and felt a tug in their chest, a yearning to know, to see beneath the surface, to understand not just how the world works, but why it matters. Let us carry these books not only in our backpacks and libraries, but in our hearts. Let us share them, teach them, pass them on. For in doing so, we pass on the legacy of the earth itself. The earth does not speak in words, but in patterns and layers and evidence left behind like breadcrumbs across time. And geology books are our guide to reading those signs. So read them, revere them, and let them awaken in you a love that is grounded, enduring, and as unshakable as the bedrock beneath our feet. Because to understand the earth, truly understand it, is to find your place in its infinite, unfolding story. And that is the greatest gift any book could ever offer.